welcome back to today's video. For today I'm going to be showing you how to make this really cute little tiny greeting card that you can use for any occasion, and it's using this Live Love Grow stamp set that I absolutely love. I wasn't too sure about it at first, but now that I've played with it I really do like it, and I'm actually doing a different technique to stamp our foliage images in here today. It gives them a much softer, more watercolory look, which I really like for this card. So this is the sample for today, and the supplies that we're going to be using is actually fairly minimal to create this card. So like I said, we're using the Live Love Grow stamp set, and we're going to be using just this stamp set with the sentiments and all of the different images. We're going to be using 3 different ink pads for today. We're going to be using 2 neutral colors, which we have Crumb Cake and Soft Suede. We're also going to need our basic black. And then for the main image colors, we're actually going to be using our Stampin' Write markers and our aqua painters. So you'll need the aqua painter. I'm using the smaller one. For the Stampin' Write markers, you're going to need 1 pink, red, whatever color you want this flower to be. You could make it whatever color you wanted. If you wanted it to be yellow, use a yellow one. If you wanted it to be green, use the greens. It's really up to you. Oops, I'm knocking stuff over. For mine though, I'm going to be using rose red. And then I'm going to be using 2 green colors for all of the other foliage images. So I'm going to be using Wild Wasabi and Cucumber Crush. Just those 2. And then I also have my Crumb Cake marker. You may or may not need this one, depending on how well you can stamp one of the images, but I'll show you where you might or might not need this one when we get into it. For our paper, this is actually a smaller sized card because it's just something that you would want to slip a friend, leave on their desk, something just really tiny and really easy to reproduce. So I went with a smaller size card today. For the base, we're going to be using Crumb Cake, and this is cut at 7.5 inches by 3 3/4. Then we have a piece of basic black, which is cut at 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. And then a piece of thick Whisper White, which is cut at 3 by 3. So let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so to start off, we're going to be stamping the large dome image onto our little piece here. And we're just going to use basic black. Ink this up. You can tell I've been using this stamp set. I wasn't too sure. I knew that I loved it. I thought it was super cute and pretty in the catalog, but I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to use it. And then I finally started playing around with it and I fell in love. I really, really do love this one. So I'm just going to center my little dome in the middle of our little tiny white square. I'm going to go ahead and clean my stamp off to the side. And next I'm going to grab my acrylic blocks over here, set those off to the side. We don't need our basic black right this second. We will need it one more time, but not until the very end. Now we're going to bring in our Crumb Cake and Soft Suede. For these 2 images, I like to use the actual stamp pads because you get a better image. When we do some of our other stamping, we're going to use our Stampin' Write markers like I talked about before. But for any kind of large image like this, a large thick image, I like to use, oh my goodness, my blocks are so dirty. Well, what can you do? For any large image, large solid image like this, I like to just use the actual stamp pad. So we're going to take this stamp from the set, and it looks like this, and it's actually the sand on the bottom of our little terrarium here. I think I've decided I'm calling it a terrarium. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but that's what I'm calling it. And I'm going to use Crumb Cake, and I'm going to ink this all up. And I'm going to go ahead and, I'm sorry if you guys can see my head. I'm going to stamp this down as best as I can. And this is where your Stampin' Write markers may come in handy. So, like I said, I tried to stamp it as best as I could, but I still didn't stamp it perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Crumb Cake marker and I'm going to just fill in all of the little areas that I didn't stamp very well. So I stamped this up a little higher than I wanted to. So I have some room on the bottom, and then I have a little bit of room on the sides where I'm just going to go in, kind of use my marker to help fill it in a little bit. And I like to put a couple of brush strokes through there just to kind of blend everything together because the colors are slightly different. It wouldn't be, nobody that you give this to will probably notice it. I notice it because I made it, but anybody you give this to isn't going to notice. So now we're going to take the other image that coordinates with that, and I need my block. And we're going to take this little guy, and this is supposed to look like the grains in the sand. And this is soft suede. We're going to take that. And this one you can't really mess it up, which is nice. And we just put all of our little grains in there. Just like that. Ooh, and I just got ink all over my finger. So I'm going to grab a paper towel. We're actually going to need a paper towel now to do our next piece anyways. So I'm just going to grab that, wipe my finger off, and let's keep moving. So now we're going to start doing our actual plants in our little terrarium. And I'm going to start off with this image right here. And it's right up here. And all of these, I want to point out, actually have outlines and then full colored images on that you can stamp in the inside. I'm not very good at lining stamps up together, so I opted to use just the outlines and then color in the images myself because I feel like I get a little bit better of a finished product that way. So we're going to use this one. It's, like I said, it just looks like this. And there's actually a flower right here on the right-hand side. So what we're going to do is use our Stampin' Write markers to color in the image before we stamp it so that we can get that variation of the two different colors, the green and the pink, or like I said, whatever color you want to use. So all I'm doing is I'm taking my Stampin' Write marker and I'm just using my marker to ink up this image. And it's totally up to you how you want to do it. If you want to just, I was playing around and I did some samples where I just stamped the image in Wild Wasabi, and then I just went and filled in the flower with the pink color, and it looks fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But then I started to use my Stampin' Write markers to give it that dimension, the variation in colors, and I really like the way that it turns out. So that's what I wanted to do. And I haven't really used my Stampin' Write markers much since I got them, so I figured it was probably a good chance for me to kind of get in there and use them a little bit more and play around with them. So all I did was I took my Wild Wasabi marker and I colored all the rest of the stamp. And then I'm actually going to use my Cucumber Crush, and all I'm going to do is just kind of tap down on different parts of the image, and that just gives it a little bit of a color variation. So now I just need to stamp. The one thing that you want to do is huff or put some hot air on the stamp and put a little bit of moisture back into the ink because it is a marker, so you need to do that to get a nice clean image. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to just stamp it down and stamp up. Now the really cool thing about this is that you get all of that different color and texture variations, which is what I really, really like in this set. It's really easy to do, and it makes it look really, really cool. So I'm going to continue to do basically that exact same thing on our other two images, but for these two, we don't need to use the Rose Red. I'm just going to use Wild Wasabi and Cucumber Crush and stamp them down. Just like this. So that was Wild Wasabi. This is Cucumber Crush. Just pouncing it down in a couple areas. Get some moisture back into my stamp. Bam, just like that. I really like this technique because it gives a nice organic look, because after all, they are plants. They're not, you know, it is an organic image. So I like kind of having the variations and like the little lines that are, there are a couple lines that are a little bit faded because you may have not gotten an even distribution of ink on all of it. I just like the way that this turns out. I really do like it. And our last image right there. Perfect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, just cleaning off my stamps and my blocks. Okay, now what I'm going to do is grab a larger block and my paper towel that I had gotten out. This is where we're actually going to use our aqua painters. So my tip is to just zap this with your heat tool for a couple seconds just to make sure that all of the ink is super dry. You are going to move the ink around just a little bit, not a ton, but there is a possibility that you'll move it around just a little bit. So I like to just zap this, make sure that it's pretty dry. You don't have to do that. That's just something that I do as an optional step. But I make sure that it's pretty dry before I go into it. So now what you're going to do is take your markers, and I'm going to go ahead and the middle image here, the one with the flower, I'm going to use the Wild Wasabi to color this in. All you have to do is take a block. You can use a piece of plastic packaging. You could even use the back of your stamp case if you wanted to. If you don't have an extra block laying around, or one that's large enough, or one that you want to write on, you can use anything, any kind of surface, any kind of plastic surface to do this on. But all you're going to do is just color, 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 color on the corner of whatever you're using. Wild Wasabi you have to color a few times because it is a lighter color. And then we're just going to use this to watercolor with. So pick up your ink, just like you would if you were using the stamp pad to color, and go ahead and just fill in everything. Now the Wild Wasabi, like I said, because it's a subtle, the color is very, very light. I like that look, but if you wanted a more deep, deep color, you could go back over it a couple of times, or you could just use a darker marker. It's a subtle, so it's not going to have, it's meant to be a lighter shade. So like I said, you use whatever you want to use, whatever color you feel comfortable using, whatever color you have in your stash. Just because I'm using these colors doesn't mean that you have to. If you have Emerald Envy, I think I did actually a bunch of swatches of all the green shades that we carry to see which ones I actually wanted to use. And Emerald Envy is a really, really pretty color that I never would have thought to use as like a foliage color, but it's actually very, very pretty. It was a little too bright and bold for what I was trying to go for. And if you need to, you can always go back in and color, get a little bit more color and pigment, and go back in. But anyways, it was a little too bright and bold for what I was doing. I wanted this to be a nice soft image, but I really, really like it. So I'm using my little paper towel, like I've mentioned a couple times before, to really keep my brush at the optimum wetness, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm done with Wild Wasabi now. I'm only coloring that middle image in with Wild Wasabi. For the other two, the outside two, I'm going to use Cucumber Crush, and because Cucumber Crush is a darker color, you don't actually need as much pigment because it's pigmented in and of itself. So I'm just going to color in the other two images, and you basically just use your acrylic block like you would use the inside of your stamp pad. You just use it as your palette, and you can go at it and do whatever you need to do. I love this little stamp set. I knew I liked it when I saw it in the catalog, so I went ahead and picked it up, but I wasn't sure what exactly I was going to use it for, and I think it's the perfect this little dome shape is the perfect size to do just these cute, tiny, like smaller mini cards. I think it's just the perfect size, and it's just super cute. And using the two different colors gives it a little bit more variation. If you wanted to, you could actually mix the two colors together, and maybe I'll try that for this one. I'm going to put a little bit of Wild Wasabi on here, and I'm just going to pick up both shades on my acrylic block. I'm going to pick up both shades and kind of mix them together to come up with a different color and see what we get. I don't know, the Cucumber Crush may overpower it a little bit, so I may not get a huge difference, but we'll see. And like I said, with the picking up the outlined image that we stamped down below, you're going to blur the lines slightly because the it's not an archival ink, so it's meant to move around a little bit if you add water to it. That's why I try and keep my water at a minimum. I'm really just trying to fill in the image as best as I can without using a ton of water. So I got a little bit of a color variation there, not much, but a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is clean my brush off because I'm going to be using my pink now. Clean my block off. And I'm just using a dry paper towel. It pretty much comes right off. I mean, you can definitely clean your blocks with just some soap and water, and that works perfect as well. But in between colors, just doing it, I don't feel like I need to clean it up. So I'm just going to take my rose red now, scribble a little on the block. I don't need a ton because this flower is not very big, and this color is fairly pigmented. And I'm just going to go in, and I try, one tip to try to not blur the lines as much, I try to just use the tip of the aqua painter and just color it in. I try to avoid touching the lines as much as possible, and that helps with not blurring out my image as much. Perfect. I love that. I love the that little touch there. And like I said, you could do it in any color you want to. You don't have to do pink. I just did pink because I think it complements the greens very nicely. But you could do whatever color you want, and that's perfectly fine. So now we are almost done. This is a super simple card. So I'm going to grab my adhesive. Oh, it's right here. Huh, if it was a snake, it would have bit me. I'm going to just put down some snail. Or this is not snail. What am I talking about? This is a Tabomono permanent adhesive. And I'm going to layer this onto our little black square. Just like that. Then I'm going to take this, I'm going to pop it up on some dimensionals. Whoa. 1, 2, 3, 4. Set that off to the side for just a second because I need my bone folder. We're going to take our piece of Cucumber Crush. This is not Cucumber Crush. This is Crumb Cake. I'm losing it. And I'm going to fold this in half, give it a nice crease, open her back up. Now, at this point, you could choose to do one of two things. We're going to stamp this little greeting down here, and you could stamp your greeting now and then place your image in relation to where your greeting is stamped, or you can put your image down and stamp your greeting in relation to where the image is. And that's what I'm going to go ahead and do, because I know I want my image to be right up against this crease up here to give it a, just to kind of mix it up so everything's not super centered. So I'm going to pretty much put it right up to the top where my fold is, and I'm just going to center it to the left and to the right. That's not exactly center, but that's fine. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Then I'm going to take my block, and I need my sentiment, and I'm going to be using this Miss You sentiment. I love the sentiments in this set because they're nice in that really pretty scripty font, but they're super tiny, so they add just that little bit of elegance, I feel like. It's just the icing on the cake. We're going to take our archival basic black ink again and just ink this up really well. And I'm just going to center it on the bottom and just stamp it. And that's it, guys. That's the card for today. It's super quick, super pretty and easy. And I'm telling you, it's just, it gives you a really nice, elegant look. It's very, very pretty. I have to say, I absolutely love it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this card for today, and I will see you guys next time. Don't forget to check out the first link in the description below. It will take you to the coordinating blog post, which will give you all of the details on how to make this card and links to all of the products. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you next time. Bye!